Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wrong to Strong Chicago. I'm your host. My name is Omar Calvillo, and tonight I have my guest. His name is Jeff Zaugg, and man, I'm excited to have him here. I was telling this brother right before we started and recorded that I started listening to his podcast. Had to be like around 2020, either right before the pandemic or during it. The stories that he has on there, the people that he brings on there, all about the dad life. So I want to share a little bit about what he's doing. So the Dad Awesome podcast, they're all about activating dads to lead with wonder, walking with dads as they lead and love their kids towards God's awesomeness. They're on a mission to see dads fully alive and fully activated in their roles, leading with wonder to build intentional connection with their kids while experiencing God's awesomeness together. They partner with dads at every stage of the journey by providing practical fatherhood resources to catalyze connection with their kids and also with other dads. So welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you, Omar. And wrong to strong. I'm just so grateful for a chance to join you as a guy who has a podcast and just sees like someone who sticks with it. I'm like so pumped that you've been after this for over a year and a half and continue to draw out stories. There's such power in a story. So yeah, thanks for having me. Really grateful.
Yes, for sure. Man, you talk about a year and a half, but you've been at this for like five, I think over 5 years, hasn't it?
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. So man, it definitely, man. At the end, I'll share the link. I'll put it in the show notes as well. But I believe it's thatawesome.org. And
Got
this
it.
brother here, he talks about me doing a year and a half. He's already on 329 interviews, and to be honest, I hope I never catch up to him because his content, his guests, like I said, they're just man. It's an amazing work that they're doing, and like I told him, I reached out to him, and I feel like I have like almost like a celebrity in a sense. God,
Well
for real,
said.
that's the way I feel. Like I told my wife, like, man, I'm having the guy from Dad also. Like, no way, like, yeah. So in the morning, she prayed. She prayed for the interview, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how your wife, she's in the middle of a prayer meeting right now, right?
Yeah, I think they have 16 moms right below me in the floor below me. So we're in a rental house in Florida right now. And she had a group from our church over praying for our kids. So it's pretty cool to sit upstairs talking to you, knowing there's a bunch of moms praying downstairs. It's a
Yes,
big
yes,
deal. Big
yes.
deal.
Oh yeah, so the prayers are going to be flowing up, as on their way to heaven. So I know
Let's
there's
go.
going to be an anointing on this interview then.
Well, and just to hop in for a second,
Yeah,
Omar,
go ahead,
around,
yeah.
when you said, a celebrity on or someone who's just done
Yeah.
a lot of podcasts, talked to a lot of people, right? I love the idea of curiosity and the podcasting space as a spot to just like express curiosity already. I mean, this is true of you. I know this is true of you, Omar. Like the idea of just stay curious, the amount of treasures that you can find by just being curious and asking questions and taking some initiative and reaching out and asking people saying, hey, will you spend an hour with me? So the curiosity as a just a characteristic is something I continue to learn about, but I see that in you and anyone can do this, right? Anyone can be curious and ask great questions. So
Yeah.
yeah, grateful to be one of them.
Okay, no, amen. So yeah, I'm glad that you're here. So man, usually like I'll start our guests like we want to know about their childhood because that as we get into their story, you usually like the childhood plays like a big role in like in the direction their life went and everything. So you want to tell us like what city did you grow up in and maybe how
Sure.
life was like for you in those young years?
Sure. Yeah. Glad to. And yeah, I just, so much love for my parents. So my childhood story is very much a story of what I experienced from, the love of my parents. So just about 60 miles to the west of where you're at today. So grew up in Rockford, Illinois. So not that far from Chicago. We used to love going into Chicago and yeah, grew up there through the age of 10 and then jumped to northern Wisconsin for about 10 years before I went to college in Minnesota. So I describe myself as I'm this Midwest guy, about a decade in each place, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. But my parents, they loved Jesus. They showed us four kids. So I have three siblings, two sisters and a brother, and we experienced the love of Jesus in our home. We also experienced a lot of like encouragement to work hard, work hard, play hard. So we worked really hard as a family, and from cleaning up job sites to helping my dad build houses, and then lots of adventures together as well. The adventures were not high budget adventures. They were like, let's explore this creek type adventures, or let's go explore and take 25 acres of land in northern Wisconsin and turn it into a new business. We built cabins and built a family resort in northern Wisconsin. But in all of that, like we experienced a lot of love from my parents. We experienced the love of God in our home. We also experienced though like a strong encouragement to work really hard in sports and succeed in sports, and that's part of my storyline with my dad. Here I am, I lead a fatherhood ministry, but I experienced a lot more love from my dad when I scored more points on the basketball court. And I think a lot of us, men and women, like, we've experienced some of that from our parents, that generation especially, like the conditional love of like, I'm going to show you a lot of love if you do this, or get those grades, or make that team. And so that shaped a little bit of my view of God. I was pretty sure that God loved me more when I did more for him because of some of those things I experienced as a kid. So I'm sure we'll wind back into that a little bit, but we built tree forts. We like I said, adventure culture of like, we explored the spot we were at in northern Wisconsin was backed up to the Nicolet National Forest, 500,000 acres of kind of uncharted land. I mean, it is charted, but like we could just go explore as kids and build forts and see what we could find in the woods. So it was a wonderful way to grow up. Definitely an entrepreneurial environment of a starter. Let's try new things. Let's start something from scratch. Let's sacrifice as a family to get this business up and going. And yeah, learned a ton. Definitely, my dad was a visionary. So I am a visionary, and I see that came straight from my dad. So that's a little bit. Any other deeper topics on childhood, or does that kind of give a flyover?
Oh yeah, that's like a good flyover, But going to the hard work, I told you that I listened to a few interviews that you did on other podcasts, and you were talking about your dad. He will put you guys to work, and I believe you mentioned the first hour was free, and then he will pay you
Yes.
$2 an hour, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
So true. So we were through eighth grade. I was homeschooled. And it was just part of our kind of our daily checklist was you do this, you do the math, you do the reading, you do the history, you do whatever the subjects. But we always had an hour of work time with dad, and that was not paid. The first hour was part of schooling. And then, yeah, $2 an hour. Maybe at eighth grade, ninth grade, maybe a little more than that, but it was the majority of my childhood. I remember the logbook. We'd log our hours, and then those hours would be used to pay for a basketball camp or to pay for a new wetsuit for barefoot water skiing or slalom water skiing behind the boat. So we never saw the money. It always went to things we wanted to buy, a pair of basketball shoes or this or that. But I mean, we learned, yeah, we had a lot of fun as kids. I mean, so much fun, but we learned how to work hard. And
Yeah.
the stories, there's lots of stories to kind of weave in there, but we were together as a family, and that's part of what I'm grateful for is my four little girls. Like, we are together as a family. The mission that I've been called to, the mission, the work that we do, try to figure out ways to get my kids, my daughters, involved at a young age. I think is a really good thing.
We'll be right back.
Do you want to dig deeper in your study of Reformed theology? The All of Life for God podcast, presented by Reformation Heritage Books, offers you weekly sermons, audiobook chapters, and interviews that will help strengthen your relationship with Jesus Christ. So what are you waiting for? Just search All of Life for God wherever you get your podcast and start listening today.
Presented by Reformation Heritage Books.
Okay, like with the one thing you mentioned too, you guys work hard, but you also played hard. So I think that's very important. Like there was like a mixture, I guess, like a balance there, right? Of
There was, yeah, I really do see, you can definitely err on either side of soft play, all games, or the, hey, we're going to work hard this morning, but then this afternoon we're gonna have a lot of fun, and we're gonna play capture the flag all over this land and recruit people in and friends in, and like there's so many of those memories of we worked, but then we played. So I'm
yeah.
grateful for that.
All right. So that was your early years. Now, what about teenage life? How were those years? As you're growing up.
Yeah. So into kind of that teenage years, junior high, I had a youth pastor at my church that taught me to play the acoustic guitar. And he just took time with me to teach me the guitar. But that led me down a little different path because I was the worship leader. I was the guy playing the guitar, leading worship in our youth group, little youth group in northern Wisconsin. That extra investment from him and his trust in saying, hey, I'm going to let you lead. Leadership in a ministry context in a local church, it definitely brought a new side of calling and a new side of I can do this versus the maybe just doing these other activities I was doing before then. And so all through kind of high school, I was a worship leader in our church, in our youth ministry. went off to college, and that was actually a big part of how I spent those 4 years, is leadership in the area of music and worship and leading teams. And so it's interesting. It's not something I do a lot of today. Actually, the acoustic guitar doesn't get played that much today. But those years, that was a part of feeling like I had a role and I was trusted. There was some awkward years of I was transitioning into public high school from a homeschool context into public high school. Tough. It was tricky friendship wise, and then even just the culture of being in a classroom all day after a culture of work hard, play hard, get the schoolwork done, and then get off an adventure.
Yeah.
So it was a tricky years, but the serving in the local church and serving in our youth ministry was a gift. I was really grateful that I was kind of encouraged and prepared with some training and some coaching how to lead worship and play the guitar from my youth pastor Mel.
Man, awesome. It sounds like leadership, not even then, but even like as a little kid, even like the hard work and all that. Man, it's like
It is.
we're like being prepared for like obviously what you're doing now. But okay, man, thank God for the ministry. And then from there, like college, did you go off to college after that, or?
Yeah, I went to college in Minnesota to study business. I guess I didn't know what I was going to study to start with, but as I went to college, I was going to play basketball for this team. It was Division III college, and I had some success in high school basketball. And I went and began some meetings with the team, with the coaches. There was no scholarship money. It was just a invitation to kind of come try out for the team, and started doing some captains practices, some weight training with the team. And I realized quickly after leaving this small town in northern Wisconsin and going to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota, I knew that basketball was something that I did enjoy, but did I enjoy it enough to spend 4 to 5 hours a day training with the team and spend that significant amount of my college experience playing a sport? Did I love it? And the answer really was no. I actually loved leading worship. I loved ministry. I loved other sides more than I loved basketball, but I was playing basketball because my dad, there's a lot of identity, a lot of love tied with a lot of like our relationship tied back to the sport, the game of basketball. And I decided about 3 weeks into being at college, I met with the coaches and told them I decided not to continue the path of training and kind of starting up. Practices hadn't even started yet officially. I was just kind of getting to know the team a little bit in the preseason, and they really were supportive of my decision. I called my dad and told him, and my dad and I actually didn't talk for the next 4 or 5 months. We didn't even speak to one another. There was such a it just really closed off a level of our relationship that he was so disappointed that I didn't play basketball. And that was a tough season for me, a tough chapter of kind of being a young man, 18, 19 years old, off to college, and having that relationship severed of just silence. We just didn't talk. And thankfully, after those months, there was some mending, but it was years later before there was really forgiveness and really healing from what happened in that moment of just sensing the lack of love because of a decision I made, and disappointment, just deep disappointment from my dad. So that was tough. College, though, overall, college were phenomenal years, amazing circle of friends, really experienced deep Christian brotherhood to a level I never had before. Experienced leadership in new contexts, some missions work that I had a chance to be a part of, traveling, living summers in different areas of the country. Got to study abroad in Australia. Met my wife when I was a junior, but didn't start dating her till I was a senior. She's a couple years younger, so my wife Michelle and I met in college. Fun side story: I returned from class one day, and she was sitting in my living room. It was a townhouse with a couple roommates, 5, 6 roommates, and she knew them from the high school she went to, and so she popped over to chat with them, not to chat with me. And I came home from class, and she was in my living room. And next thing, I did a bunch of homework after she left, and not real homework, but homework asking questions about her, and found out about her and asked her out on a date. And it was about a year later that we started dating because of me traveling to Australia. But grateful. Lots of good gifts in the college years. She was by far the best one of those gifts.
Amen. And still there, right? Okay, so you said college, you met your wife and got married, obviously, from there, and kids come into the picture.
Yeah, so we're 18 years married as of this July. So very, very grateful for Michelle. And we we were 5, 6 years into marriage when we started kind of seeking that next chapter of saying that, man, we'd love to grow our family. And the journey actually took a couple years between when we were hoping to have babies till when we actually got to hold our first baby. And some disappointment, some heartache in there. A lot of our friends have had a journey of just more difficulty getting pregnant than we would have thought. And maybe it just wasn't talked about back decades ago. But yeah, a lot of prayer led to we got to welcome our first daughter in, I guess it was 2013. So she's 10 and a half now. And so we have 4 daughters. We have 10, 7, 5, 3 are the age of the 4 girls. And yeah, I mentioned earlier, we're living in Northeast Florida now, and had my girls out surfing this afternoon. So we were in the water surfing together as a family. My 2 oldest could both now paddle out to the outer break and surf, and anyways, that's taken way forward in the chapter. But yeah, and we added kids kind of in the. We'd been married 7 years when we started growing our family with little kiddos.
Nice. So you got them surfing. You know, I heard of a part of your story where your dad will take you barefoot skiing. Is that what you call it? Water skiing?
Yeah, now I'm 6'7", so I'm a pretty tall dude, and my feet are size 15. So some water skiers would just laugh, and they'd be like, it's not really that hard to barefoot water ski when you have skis for feet." So yeah,
Right,
but
right, right, right.
I grew up I'd call it a Midwest waterman. Like I love the water. I love water skiing, barefooting, whatever in the water. I love it. And now to live near an ocean is a whole nother chapter of being, taking my 7-year-old out in the waves today, surfing, and a larger set came through. And I mean, there's not much time to react when a large wave, and there's 2 surfboards, and we're trying to figure out how to make sure she's safe and doesn't get hit by one of the boards. And so it's a new chapter of being a dad, and the power of the ocean is a real thing.
Right. You know, one thing I heard you say is also the doing those first things together sometimes with your kids. You were talking about that, how
That-
like having those moments where you're doing it for the first time, but you're doing it with your kid also together, and it's almost like
Yeah. Well, I mean, that ties back into being curious and being willing to kind of risk a little bit. Yeah, I love sharing first moments. And I have been trying actually since I turned 40 2 years ago. I'm just trying one at a time. I've done 27 things brand new that I'd never done in my life. I'm going for 40. The goal is to do 40. I call it the intentional 40. And just after turning 40, I'm trying to do 4 brand new things that I've never done. And from flying an airplane to going in a hot air balloon to dropping into a half pipe on a skateboard. Like I'm trying new things, and rock climbing for the first time ever outside. I did that with my daughter. So I haven't done all the new experiences with my daughters. The goal is 10 of them are with my daughters, and 10 with my wife, 10 with friends, 10 with mentors. But yeah, I'm 27, I think, into my 40 list. So I've got like 13 more to knock off.
nice. You know, that's a good to make a list, like to keep track. That's that's something that I got to start doing. But you know what? Let me ask you this: so you're married, kids, or you started working? I know you want to talk a little bit about that, and then I believe from there you went into ministry.
We'll be right back.
In this troubled and divided world, many of us yearn for the body of Christ to truly reflect the character of Jesus. On Shifting Culture, we engage in insightful conversations with leaders such as Sarah Bessey, Jamie Winship, and Scott McKnight. Together, we explore what it means to live in the kingdom of God, embody Jesus in our daily lives, and make a positive impact on the culture around us. Join us on Shifting Culture for these transformative discussions wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, career-wise, I was a business guy in college. Didn't know necessarily what trajectory, where I would kind of jump into next. And I actually decided those summers that I spent working short-term missions work, I was a leader on different areas of the country, actually the Navajo Nation in Arizona, and then the Mohawk Nation in upstate New York. Got to serve and connect with the people and help bring teams to just help run kids programs and help bring some just care to serve the local churches in those areas. And it was amazing summers, but that led to, they hired me full time out of college and got to do ministry, business, kind of got to do both, kind of best of both worlds, a business role, but for a ministry that I loved and really had seen so many lives changed. So I did that role for a number of years. We ended up starting to acquire other organizations, and there was some opportunities to kind of move into more of an entrepreneurial, visionary space within that company. And So I got to just really learn a ton about starting new nonprofit organizations specifically, which was wild to get all this startup experience within kind of the organizational safety net of a larger ministry. So I got to do that for years, and then I became a pastor. The first day I was a pastor, and this is the church we had been at for a decade. So we'd been there a long time as elders and serving in different capacities. And the first day I was a dad, my baby girl was born on a Sunday morning, was the first day I was a pastor. I missed my first Sunday. So I love telling that story that I didn't show up for my first Sunday as a pastor because I was holding my newborn baby. So yeah, that kind of pivoted from business into ministry, kind of a pastoral role for 7 years. And then now into the work that I get to do now for 3.5 years. I've been doing this full time with
Wow.
Dad
Okay,
Awesome.
let's go there. Before you get fully into it, right? I believe
Sure.
you did like a pilot, like a run, like a test run, I believe, for the podcast, right? You
Yep.
want to talk about maybe where you got the idea from? How did it,
Sure.
start?
Every passion project usually has a genesis story, kind of a where did that thing start? And so for me, it was a conversation about intentional fatherhood with it was my wife's cousin's husband. So as a family member who's asking me, how do you stay so intentional about being a dad? And I really could not respond to that question with just a quick answer. I thought about the question, and I had not read any books on intentional fatherhood, any parenting books for dads. I hadn't been a part of any small groups. I hadn't listened to any podcast on fatherhood. I hadn't gone to a conference. I hadn't had a coach. I hadn't done an online course. Truly, all of this sources of wisdom usually that I'd go after. I had not been doing those things as a young dad. I had just been kind of figuring it out as I go. And I wanted to ratchet up, to turn up the dial of intentionality personally. So I went looking for resources, and I did a 10-week experiment about intentional fatherhood. And I shared things I had found for 10 straight weeks with my friends. I didn't post it on social media. I just shared, here's a little 10-minute gathering. I was really curious, back to that theme of curiosity. I was curious. I gathered resources. I encouraged these guys and myself, and I did it 10 weeks in a row. And after 10 weeks, I was like, I have nothing else to share on intentional fatherhood. I have nothing else. So I started interviewing guests. And that's when it shifted from a little experiment for 10 weeks to, oh, this is actually a weekly cadence, a weekly rhythm. I interview somebody every week, and I called it Dad Awesome. Pretty much from the start. I actually recorded episode 1 with a different name, and then I re-recorded it. So I never released by anything else. It's been Dad Awesome it's actually 6.5 years. So it's crazy. The journey of every week I interview a guest about intentional fatherhood, and it's changed me. I've added 2 daughters since then. 6.5 years, lots changed. But by just sticking with it and asking questions and watching, it trickles back to me stories of dads whose lives have changed because they've begun listening, learning, and entering fatherhood with a full heart, and entered not with perfection. In fact, there's those guys in Texas, dude perfect. We are not looking to be dad perfect by any means. And like some people joke about our names, Dad Awesome is about a pursuit of the hearts of our kids, a turning of our hearts towards our kids, and saying, I enjoy you. I love being a dad. I love that I get to be a dad. This is a gift. This is not something I'm going to grumble my way through. And that's the posture of Dad Awesome.
Man, nice. So that started, and when did you know you got your 10 episodes, and obviously you start doing the interviews?
Yeah.
When did you know, like, I guess, to do this full time? Because this was just like maybe like a hobby at that time, or
Oh,
what would
totally.
you
I
call
call it, some people would call it a side hustle. I call it
Okay.
a passion project. Now I did, because I was serving in a church that was a fairly large church. I knew I needed to do some of the interviews during the day. I made sure to have permission. So I asked my boss, hey, this is going to help the dads in our church. Can I use a little bit of my work time to do the interviews? But basically my day off, Fridays, and then mornings, evenings, that's when I did the work. It was about 10 hours a week of work to launch Dad Awesome. And that was, most of those were on the side. The interviews were sometimes during the day, but was so grateful to be the support of the church. I would say I knew I was onto something when there was all of a sudden there's lots of guys in our church that started forming small groups, and I was creating curriculum, and they were doing small group conversations around what we were creating. guys started signing up for. We had a couple hundred dads sign up for a daily text message. So I was sending a text out every day to encourage these dads. And that was before AI, before I could have AI write the text messages. So I was writing them myself. It really caught though when we moved from resourcing dads to activating dads. So that was a shift about a year into the ministry. And this was all, again, on the side, a passion project for about 3 years. So anyone who's thinking right now about, your wrong to strong audience, your community, if you're thinking about starting something that's a mission that's going to help change lives, right? A lot of us have an idea, but I'd say do it as a passion project with no money involved, with no, you can start a podcast for $200 budget. Like you don't need much money to start a podcast. It's super cheap to get into it. But what it's not, it's very inexpensive for gear. It's very expensive for time. Like it takes a lot of time, and it's not very, in the short term, you don't get much positive feedback. A podcast is a lonely space. Like I'm chatting with you right now, Omar, and like I love the interaction, like in your eyes and like your grin, and like this is fun. This is really fun. But then you have all the work that surrounds this conversation, and there's no feedback loops. And to start with, the downloads are really minimal. There's not that many people listening. And so all that to say, it was 3 years of seeing, of trying, of continuing, long faith, hey, I know God has equipped me to do this. I know it's like good for my family. I've always told my girls, this is the button right here. This is the eject button. If Dad Awesome is not good for you, if you girls don't love that your dad leads Dad Awesome, hit the button and I'll stop. Because I would hate to be a dad who my little girls, they feel like it's taking away from me being an awesome dad for them, right? So it has to be beneficial. And that would go for any mission. Anyone who's listening, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing, starting this thing, make sure it's good for those you love most first. Is it good for your wife? Is it good for your kids? Is it good for your closest circle of friends? Do they say, this is good? Or are they like, nah, then don't do it. Don't do it. Make sure it's good for the people in closest proximity. Yeah. But all that, I was going to say, I knew it was going to take off when we started activating dads. We moved to rally and activate dads to go, or men to go do something hard to help the fatherless. So the side of our activation events called Fathers for the Fatherless, that's when I knew when we were onto something, because that's when I saw like men, friends of friends of friends, the ripple effect of people telling others about the mission and inviting them. And very quickly, we had over 200 men out riding their bikes 100 miles. Like we do these 100-mile bike rides, and we do obstacle course races, and we do triathlons, hard things, physical pursuits. Like we do hard stuff to raise money for kids, or not for kids. We raise money for ministries, other ministries that serve the fatherless directly. So that's what that side of the mission. That's when I knew we were onto something.
Man, so I want to go back to something you said about the passion project. Like, and I know you were challenging, man. Like, if they know, like, they're being called to do something that's going to bring a change. But I want to talk about the work behind the scenes. Like, how much work does it actually take to do the podcast? Because it's easy for somebody to go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just hit the play button and start listening to the whole, whatever it is, 45 minutes, hour interview. But you have to do that. But how much work actually goes into the one show? You want to share?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for example, this conversation we're having right now, I took my girls surfing, I put my girls to bed, grabbed a quick shower, turned on the computer, and go. Like, I'm on this side of the conversation. This is all fun. It's like we get to chat for an hour, we get to laugh and connect and share testimony. Now, the other side, though, so the side of the work that you're doing tonight, like as a host of a podcast, I think I put 4 to 5 hours of preparation, listening to other interviews they've done, books, reading books, watching the guys I'm interviewing tomorrow, the Kendrick brothers. They've got this film coming out in August called The Forge. I got an advance copy. I had to watch I got to watch the film. I cried my way through their film. Shout out. You got to wait till end of August to watch the film. But The Forge this is the guys that did the movie Fireproof and Courageous and War Room. Oh my goodness. The Forge I cried my way through that movie. So good, about men and discipleship. But I've taken a lot of time to prepare for that interview tomorrow that I'm having with the Kendrick brothers. And just like you prepared for this, you've already brought up a couple of times. You've listened to, you did a bunch of prep. So it's the prep work. Then there's the recording the conversation, which is it's fantastic. I love that part. But then there's the editing in post. Then there's the polishing to make sure it's going to sound good in your earbuds, in your car, everywhere. And that I did myself for 2 years. And I have someone who does that small final editing, but all the other roles basically I still do. There's the writing show notes, there's the publishing the podcast, promoting it, cutting into reels for Instagram, trying to spread it. It's a ton of work. But if you truly are passionate and if you're curious and you're learning, and my posture all shifted with podcasting too. I just am so eager to see what I can learn. God, what do you have for me in this conversation? That's what shifted it for me. And I want to make sure my guests have a phenomenal conversation. I want to make sure that they feel like really valued and like I really am thankful for every minute of their time. And that shifted it because I really it was more fun for them, more fun for me, more impactful for both of us, and the friendship started growing. Podcast, you spend an hour with somebody,
Yeah.
like you're pretty well along the way to being friends with that person when you spend an hour talking like this.
Right.
So I'm grateful. I'm like, well, next time through Chicago, we're hanging out.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. And you know what? One thing I don't know if I'll be able to wear a spandex, man. Is there any other type of gear you could wear when you're riding a bike? I was thinking about that. Like, I don't think nobody wants to see me in my chicken legs, wearing spandex, So
So it is funny. I thought the same thing. I was not a cyclist
okay,
at all. But when there's in our case, there was like 30 guys the first year. When you're with 30 other guys wearing the cycling gear together, it doesn't feel as weird. It doesn't feel as weird. Now, spandex on cyclists, it is a safety thing, and it is actually way more comfortable to be a dude and wear spandex than to wear like gym shorts on a hard bike seat. But I still laugh at myself because I'm a tall dude in spandex.
Okay.
Now we have triathlons as well, which you're not spending as much time in spandex. We actually have a half Ironman team this coming Saturday, so just a few days from now in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is crazy, half Ironman. But then we have obstacle course races, so Spartan races, these intense obstacle course races. You don't need spandex for that. That's a pair of gym shorts and no shirt. You just get out there and go after it and get muddy. So we've got other options for you.
Gotcha. Now these events, where do they usually take place? Is it different parts of the country or?
So that's what actually moved my family to leave the church or get sent out from the church and go full time. We got an RV and we spent 2.5 years traveling the country from events in New York. Every year we do an event in New York. We were in Philadelphia, Colorado, Arizona, California, Florida. We've got an event in Texas coming up. I'm missing a few locations, but we've done 6 years of these events. We had a guy do an event in France, a guy in Mexico. So we are, it's gone beyond anything that I could have imagined. Over 950 men have been a part of the mission, and we've raised over $900,000 for our partners who directly serve the fatherless. So it's crazy, but we hit the road in an RV, and that's how I got to go to all the events. I didn't want to be a dad who took a flight away from his little girls to go encourage other guys to be intentional. So it was, I felt like it was going to be counter mission. So we prayed as a family and we hit the road in the RV, and that was a 2.5-year adventure.
Nice. I want to ask you about that. The wife. Obviously, you feel like, man, this is the direction God's, leading you through the podcast. How important was it that she was on board, or what was her, I guess, thinking, during that, while you guys were praying about it,
Right. She's been involved in every single step. Like a passion project that goes on for 6.5 years does not happen without, the person you're married to, it being a deep passion of theirs. And the fact that she's, meeting with moms, praying right now, she cares deeply about prayer and about motherhood, about fatherhood. She sees, there's several single moms in the room below me right now as we record, and she just sees the pain of not having a dad. Be present, be involved, step in with their whole heart, take initiative. She sees the pain, and she sees how much it fires me up, and so she's all behind it. Now, living in an RV, if it wasn't for the perfect scenario of we shifted to homeschool anyways because of COVID, so we had already shifted to homeschool. And we already had a few friends that had hit the road and traveled, because during COVID, that was a safer way to kind of travel, was through an RV travel, right? So we had some models, some examples, and it was a test trip. We had a family let us borrow for 3 weeks their RV, and she saw what it did to our family as far as how close we came in such close proximity, but also like the adventure, the seeing new places, the stressing out of our minds, like RV life, the stressful points, the valleys. And I really have been like captivated by story. A low point in a story is a setup for an answered prayer, is a setup for a peak in a story. In every peak, there's a valley coming. There's going to be a valley. Like, you don't stay at the peak, right, of any good story. So our story as a family, we would write down as we travel remembrance lists. We'd write down, look what God did. Every time we move the RVs, we have so many sheets of paper of just filled with, look what God did. Look how he answered this prayer. And that actually fueled, I don't think there's any chance my wife would have continued to travel in an RV for 2.5 years, but we saw God's goodness, his faithfulness, his miracles, his provision, and that fueled us really as a family. And we saw what it did for the relationships between our daughters and the deep friendships that they have because of traveling and adventuring as a family. So there's no way, if you go back 5 years ago, my wife would say, I'm in for 2.5 years of RV travel. She'd be like, I'm in for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's wild how it all came together.
Right. I would ask you, can you give us like, I know you say you got papers full of the remember. Can you give us one that stands out? Like you mentioned, it had to be like a low point, but obviously it turned to something good.
Give you both.
An example?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple examples. The very first night of 550 nights, the first night, we got a late start and a major windstorm kicked up. And in Iowa, we got stuck. We had to get off the road. It was late. It's windy. It's snowy. And we park. And the very first night, there's a button that says auto leveling, and the jacks come out. The leveling jacks in the bottom of this RV come out and level us out in a parking lot of a Cracker Barrel. So we're in a parking lot of this Cracker Barrel restaurant, and we have a great night's sleep, first night's sleep. And the next morning, we go to try to get off the leveling jacks, and they had seized up the cold, and they got overextended that first night. So we got stuck for 4 days, 3 nights in a frozen, windy parking lot in Des Moines, Iowa. Our first 4 nights, like these 4 nights, was the most stressful. While we were sitting in that parking lot, a vehicle ran into us. We're sitting still, and they backed into this huge RV, ran into our RV. We're freezing cold. We're stressed out. We're late because we have a schedule. We have events we're going to. And that's just an example of, we prayed and we worshiped every day. We prayed, and my girls saw me more stressed than they'd ever seen Dad. And like the amount of money we paid for the RV, and then to have the second day to wake up to a major issue on a holiday weekend, so we couldn't get an RV mechanic. And it was a crazy story. But I mean, there was layer after layer after layer of miracles that got us through that. And we wrote them all down. We have the details of like this person who came along, and this person who called, and this person who prayed. And the solution was a crazy solution, how we got down off the leveling jacks. And I don't have time for the whole story now, but
Right.
yeah, that's one. I mean, we got stuck in a horse pasture in a snowstorm in Texas. I mean, there's lots of, the ants took over. Hundreds of thousands of ants filled our RV in San Diego, California. We woke up and the floor was moving. And I mean, it's crazy. So many stories.
Yeah, but you know what? Like when God usually calls us to do something, there's usually gonna be opposition, right? Usually it's gonna come some way somehow. So what keeps you like going? Like during those times.
Count on opposition. Oh my goodness. That day with the ants, I mean, we sat outside at the end of cleaning and figuring out ways to seal them out, basically. And we sat and we roasted hot dogs at our outdoor campfire pit, and the sunset is setting, and we look at each other, and we just truly like we're giving thanks that we made it through. And there's those moments, but then there's also moments of, we're finishing a 100-mile bike ride and raising tens of thousands of dollars for a partner, and we're next to the mountains in the Front Range of Colorado, and my girls are seeing a dad who is watching other dads hug their kids at the end of a ride, and know it's the hardest physical thing that dad has done since becoming a dad, and their kids cheered him on, and they know my dad did that because of a mission of helping kids that don't have a dad. And there's there's beautiful moments. My daughter, my youngest 3-year-old, loves orca whales. Of all things to love as a little 3-year-old, to love orca whales, right? And we, in Seattle, we met a family in Texas in an RV, and they lived in Seattle. And when we were going through Seattle, they took us to their cabin in the San Juan Islands, and they took us out in their boat, and we got to ride alongside of a pod of orca whales with my little 3-year-old. Just her eyes. I mean, this is an experience that any adult is like a once in a lifetime. And we, for $0, it was because we met a family who happened to have this boat, who happened to have a pod of whales at the right time. And like those moments, I mean, we have pages of stories of like, can you believe we got to be a part of this? Like this adventure has led to a moment that we'll never forget the rest of our life. And some of those are like orcas, and some of those are like hot dogs with a sunset with a RV that no longer is full of ants.
or 100,000 ants. So, man, that's amazing how one step of faith, leads to all these other like encounters and all these other the people you meet. As you've been doing the podcast, is there any like story that stands out? I mean, as far as like feedback, maybe that you gotten from somebody that listened to one of the interviews. I'm sure you get like maybe emails or calls.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave the names off of these stories because they email me. There's some beautiful stories, really beautiful stories. There's a guy who plows snow for a living that will listen, 5 straight hours of Dad Awesome podcast interviews and find himself parking this huge snowplow and taking notes and crying in the cab in the middle of the night while he's snowplowing of like healing he's experiencing. We talk a lot about you have to be a son before you can be a father, a son of God. And most of our conversations, I brought it up already with my dad and some of the hard like stuff about conditional love. Like most of the healing process of a dad, of experiencing the good, perfect love of a heavenly father, that thread comes through a lot of our podcasts. So a lot of the stories I get back are guys who are experiencing the love of God, and now they can bring their whole hearts. They can bring love to their kids in a different way. And so those stories, there's a lot of stories of just like people who reach out and say, thank you. Actually, I have one, he wouldn't mind if I mentioned his first name, Taylor. He was pregnant. He didn't have his baby yet. And he started listening to the podcast. And he actually was near where I was living at the time and took me to coffee and asked me questions. And now he's got 2 kids. He's been listening for 3-4 years. He's got 2 kids, and he's one of our key kind of champions of our Fathers for the Fatherless movement. He's the man in charge of the Half Ironman team in Chattanooga. And he has the friends he's invited into this mission. We're talking 30 or 40 men are a part of the mission and have raised probably $80,000 because of one guy who deeply cares. And he randomly, heard about the podcast, and he's not even a dad yet. I mean, he was a dad because his wife was pregnant, but pretty special to see the initiative and the not only curiosity, but he was like strategic about growing as an intentional dad. And Dad Awesome was a source of wisdom for that. And what a privilege, right? What a privilege.
Amen. Yeah. It's a privilege to know that God's using you to be a blessing in the lives of others. You know what? You brought up something about the man. His wife was pregnant. There's a ministry that you're also part of. I know you mentioned Fathers for the Fatherless, but there's also one. I don't know the name of it, but it deals with crisis pregnancy centers, but for men.
Yes.
And I found that unique. Like I've heard of crisis pregnancy centers for women. This is the first time I was listening. I believe it was an interview that you did that for men. And like, man, why would men need a crisis pregnancy center? You want to tell us why?
Yeah, and there's several. So these amazing support centers with counselors and medical help for women who are prayerfully trying to decide are they going to keep the baby. I just like could cheer on all day long, like the people who work in that space and the lives that are saved. But it's not just, yes, beautiful. They've chose to keep the baby, but there's the care for that mom, right? There's the care and their support and getting her a car seat and helping her find a mentor, right? There's all these things these crisis pregnancy centers bring. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But some of them are now creating programs for dads. So my buddy Luke, I'll connect you with Luke so you can be in touch with him. He has 5 daughters, and he leads this organization called Always Intentional Man. AIM for short. And they basically create resources to coach dads. So they actually incentivize these dads who, this baby is going to be born soon, and they haven't held the baby yet because the birth hasn't happened yet, but they give them gift cards to incentivize them to come to some classes, to come in and just learn, come in and receive support. And then they slowly move into, they do coaching, life coaching. Like, it's a really valuable life coaching that you would usually pay like $100 an hour to get coaching like this. They provide it for free, these amazing life coaches, to help these dads create a fatherhood mission statement. And they take them through a series of like 7 weeks of this program. And it is like, to see and hear the stories of these dads who have it on their wall, this plaque. It's their father, they're realizing they have a vision for fatherhood. They have a passion and a calling to be a dad for this baby, versus a dad who, okay, the woman who we had a baby together, she's keeping the baby and I'm peacing out, right? That could be more the norm if you're not married, and there's various things that happen. So it's beautiful, like learning about some of the resources for these young dads, or dads of young babies. I'm like so pumped to support them.
Man, awesome. I know when I heard that, like, man, that's amazing. And I was thinking back, like when I first had like my daughter, like I know I wasn't prepared, to be a dad, but when my daughter came, man, she definitely changed my heart, softened my heart. Man, they brought a side out of me that I didn't know I had. I started singing songs to her, like making up my own songs, and my wife looking at me like, man, where did this come from? Like, I don't know, something about a daughter. Did you have a similar experience having your first one when
Oh, I had no idea how much I was going to love being a dad. I was overwhelmed with my first, like, I feel like I was overwhelmed more than like just treasured all the moments. I treasured some moments, but I was more like just trying to figure out, are we going to get sleep ever? And how do you change a diaper? And I had like no experience helping like nieces, nephews, like helping my siblings with kids. I felt very rookie and very underprepared. But as I've had additional little girls, like now I like the idea of missing moments like that, like breaks my heart when a dad is overwhelmed or just too busy or feels like that's not for me. Like the young kid, let the mom care for that little baby. I'm just like heartbroken when I hear these stories, because these moments are to be treasured, and like they are such a gift. I get that different dads are wired different ways, but man, to look for those moments. Actually, one quick just side tip for a young dad, any young dad listening, or if you're going to have a baby in the future, as a young dad with that newborn baby, the first couple weeks, take your shirt off and the skin to skin. Some people are not encouraged to do this. Like the hospital won't tell you to do this. Take your shirt off and hold that baby on you. It's the most beautiful bonding thing with a little baby, to just like skin to skin contact. And it's like one of my favorite things. And my youngest is now 3, so that's over. It's gone. I'm like, no.
Awesome. I'm sure that brings like more of a connection there.
Yeah, it is. And it's the most precious thing, especially if the baby's sleeping. It's just like, oh, yes.
Nice. I want to ask something that you mentioned earlier. You said when you were preparing like to do an interview, you maybe read a book that the author wrote. Well, what's the importance of reading? Like as men, I know it's not that. Like for me, like I try to read them, and I was telling my wife the other day, she was giving me, oh, here, read this book. I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna read it because I already got like 10 books that I'm like a quarter of the way in, and I'm not seeing them through. So I told her, no, the one I'm reading, I want to see it through, and I got some way to go. But what's the importance for us as men to read? I think there's a lot of men out there that don't read no more.
Yeah, it wasn't natural to me. I wouldn't, young, married, so call it the first, really even the first 10 years of marriage. So this is probably I've been married 18 years. The last 8 years, I've been much more intentional with my reading, maybe 10 years. So this is something I'm definitely committed to. I'm a reader. I know that I'm a leader. I know that God has called me to lead and to influence others, my family, men, dads, community, like the church I'm in, the places that I work and connect with, partners. Like I am a leader. I know I'm a leader. And you've heard this before. Like, leaders are readers, right? I mean, because if a leader isn't continuing to learn new things, if they're not continuing to stretch themselves and check and try new things, and we're not going to be leaders that people want to follow, right? So now it is finding the time to read without a clear deadline is tough because it just like that book can sit on the nightstand or can sit on the coffee table for a long time. So I need accountability to read, to actually be a reader. Now there's certain topics that I really want to learn about, but accountability is huge. So the podcast gives me natural accountability. I interviewed last Thursday, John Tyson. So he's the author of The Intentional Father, and he's releasing a book here next week called Fighting Shadows. And I read the whole thing for that interview. Not often do I read the whole book for an interview, but I have just such respect for this. He's a pastor, author, definitely a thought leader in the fatherhood ministry space from New York City. I wanted to read the whole thing to really honor him as he's given me an hour of his time. I wanted to read the whole book ahead of time, but now I want to read that book again with other men. So you can't do this all the time, but I'm going to find a group of men, and we're going to go just 7 weeks. We're going to go through the 7 sections, the 7 shadows that we can be fighting. I know. So other men to read together is a huge way that I finish books, is because I know this chapter is due and we're going to talk about it. That's huge. And you can do that even remotely. If you got a couple friends in different areas of the country or around the world, you can say, hey, let's read this book. And each week, just post a couple takeaways from each chapter. You can start a book club with a group text, right? So reading is such a value. We're trying to raise our daughters to love learning, just the love for learning. Now, Audible, I spent a lot of time on a bicycle, and so listening to something on long cardio type training, Audible is good, but the level, I'm back and forth on it. I'm back and forth because I take a lot of underlines, a lot of scratching up notes on the side. Like, yeah, I don't think you soak in the same percentage when it's through your earbuds than it is when you read a book. But it's still, man, I've listened to books first, and then I've gone and read the paper book second time through as well. But I think another quote that I can't recall who said it is like, you'll be the exact same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the books that you read and the men you surround yourself with. So, I mean, even if it's 2 books a year, if you pick 10 wise books and you read those 10 books over 5 years, 2 a year, and we can all read 2 books a year. And then you be intentional about building strong friendships with, pick 3 or 4 guys that you're going to just invest in and really build stronger friendships. You're going to be a totally different person in 5 years because of those books and the people.
Hey, man, you mentioned John Tyson. I believe
Tyson,
Australia. Is he from Australia? Was it
Yes, the Australian that now lives in New York. Yes.
Because you know what? That's one of the interviews that I listened to that you did, and I actually bought his book. I got it on Kindle on my app. So that's one book that I have on there on fathering. But I'm gonna put you on the spot. I know we got the Bible, obviously number 1, but what's your top 3 books? And like I said, I say it's a tough question because I've listened to your podcast, and a lot of your guests have written books. So it's not like, like to down one and not the other. But what's like the first? If a man's on a budget, he got $30, that's all he got, he could only afford 3 books. What
sure, 3 books
would you recommend that these men read?
Yeah, and are these are for men, and are they for dads as well? Is we going that narrow?
I would say in general, because one thing that you brought up is like the fathering life, and then I love what you said about being a son. Like, I think it starts there, because I was listening to one of your other podcasts. I think it was 102, where you were talking about some prayers and some declarations that you make, and as I was hearing it, and the confession that you were making, it was like who you are in Christ and who you are like as a man, as a son of God, right? So that's very important. So I would say, like, in general, like father, maybe even a husband, or just a man, a son of God, So what's like 3 books?
You know what I was doing there, Omar, as I was stalling. I was stalling by asking the follow, because I'm rattling through like 12. I'm trying to take my top 12 down to 3. So here's, I will right away recommend, the author is Jack Frost, and the book is Spiritual Slavery to Sonship. And he passed away 20 years ago, but I just read it for the 4th time. So Spiritual Slavery to Sonship by Jack Frost. He was a deep sea fisherman turned pastor, and it's all about being a son of God and walking in freedom, our true identity as sons versus we live as orphans or as slaves, trying to earn our way versus actually resting in the Father's love. So that book's phenomenal. I am going to recommend, it's wild because I just finished reading it, but I already mentioned it, John Tyson, Fighting Shadows. It's co-written with Jeff Bethke, but it releases next week. So it'll be out by the time you drop this podcast. It releases May 22nd, I think. So yeah, phenomenal book. It's interesting to recommend a brand new book versus this is going to be tough. Now I got to pick between. Will you give me four? Will you give me a total of $4? Is that all right?
A bonus, 3 and +1.
Yeah. So the book Draw the Circle by Mark Batterson. It's a short read. It's a 40-day prayer challenge. Draw the Circle. I mean, you're talking 5 minutes a day for 40 days. That book was super impactful for me around just hearing God's voice and really seeking to be a man of prayer, a dad who prays and who presses into that space of prayer. So, and then, I asked you for a bonus, and now I'm forgetting what my last one was. I mean, I can't. It's hard not to recommend John Eldredge, and he's got like 6 books I'd recommend, but his book Wild at Heart is so good. It's 20 years old, and it just got kind of not even updated. It just got re-released as the same book 'cause it's so good. So Wild at Heart by John Eldredge.
Nice. I know you guys did an event, I believe, out there, right? And was it Wisconsin? It was like a year or two ago. You guys had
Yeah,
like
there's
street out there or something?
So, and I actually wasn't able to be there. I was on the prayer team. I couldn't even be there. But yes, we rallied our people to go do one of the Wild at Heart boot camps. And you can look those up. Those are all over the country all the time. The Wild at Heart boot camps. I mean, it's funny. Now the other book came to mind, Ruthless Trust, Brendan Manning. There's another one for you. That's a phenomenal read about trusting God. So there you go. I'll stop there. There's so many more books, but that'll give you a few.
Okay, no, that's good. Yeah, I'm gonna put the links to every book like on the show notes if the guys want to go on there and click on there. But you know what? When I reached out to you, I told you like the men that I feel that we're reaching. A lot of these men didn't have fathers, or maybe their fathers weren't like the best role models, I guess. So I really wanted to have you on here just to connect our audience to what you're doing. That awesome fathers for the fatherless. And everything that you're doing, I believe, is just I see God's hand in it. But I don't know if you want to talk about this. But your dad, when you first started, I believe you released the first show. You want to talk about what news you got from your dad, and then tell the rest of the story, like up to 101.
Sure. Yeah, grateful to get to share that. Thank you for the invitation. So I launched the first episode of Dad Awesome in January of 2018. And the next day, my dad rushed to the hospital. So I got a call from my mom and dad and kind of panicking as they rushed to the hospital. He was having type issues with his balance and his mind. And 10 days in the hospital. I visited him twice during those 10 days because he was a couple 100 miles away in Wisconsin. We found out that he had brain cancer and lung cancer, so both, and started a battle. And for the next almost 2 years, I spent a lot of one-on-one time with my dad, a lot of trips. The church that I was on staff at the time were so supportive of me just taking quick 1 or 2 day trips to be back with him. And so I did a lot of those trips, a lot of road time to pray and think about, and a lot of conversations around healing. And I released episode 100 of Dad Awesome after my dad was so supportive of the launch of Dad Awesome, the visionary side, the supporting dads. He was like, he listened to the episodes. He was so encouraging. And the next day after launching episode 100, my dad went home to heaven. And so I really, the foundational 100 weeks of this ministry were the last 100 weeks with my dad before he experienced being with his heavenly Father in heaven. And so it was beautiful. It's hard. I dedicated episode 101, I believe it was, maybe it was 100, to my dad. And then the next week, the next episode was an episode full of prayers and declarations that you mentioned. So those 2 episodes, the tribute to my dad, and then the one on prayers and kind of declaring out loud my identity as a son of God, and declaring that this is who I am, these promises from Scripture, has been a gift. So very grateful.
Yeah, man, thanks for sharing that whole story. I know it's sad, but just the fact that you got to spend that time with your dad, and as you're launching this ministry, like, like dad being there for him, then like being a blessing to other men who want to be good fathers. And that's actually what I wanted to ask you. You said you dedicated a 101 to your dad, and I actually have the list here that you shared. So if it's okay with you, I wanted to read them, and then maybe if you could expound on it a little bit, like on each one.
Sure.
And because I believe though that there's a lot of men that are going to be listening to this interview that desire to be good fathers, that want to be, that want to break generational curses or strongholds that they've been like carrying. But here they are, they've been saved, they've been transformed, by God. God's been moving, but now they need like something, I guess, an aim, right? Something to aim for. They don't know what it means to be a good father, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that we could put up there on the list. But I believe that this list you have here, I think it's a good start. If we could even strive to attain some of these in our own life. So I'll start with one. It says here 10 ways I want to be a dad like my dad. So number one, you put love my mom. He kissed my mom daily, served mom, and valued and deeply loved his wife.
Yeah, I mean that it's so easy to drift away and pursue other things versus the one that, my best friend, and pursue the woman who's a gift from God that I've gotten a chance to marry. I mentioned earlier, her name's Michelle. And so even you reading that back, it's like, oh, I just want to be more like my dad in that, of just like pursuing the heart of my wife, serving her, encouraging her, using my words. So yeah, I want to be like that.
Yeah, I read a book. I think it was Dr. Edwin Lewis Cole, and he said, "The best gift a father can give his children is to love their mother." And that always like stood out to me. And then when I read your number one, like to love the mom, like here you are, that awesome. But I love the fact that you start with loving mom.
Yeah.
They need to see that, because I believe it brings security to them to know that, man, mom and dad, they love each other, they care about each other, and they grew up feeling secure instead of like growing up insecure. Or is mom and dad gonna stay together? And we know like the cost or the price of the divorce in families. Like how it affects the children. So I believe, man, for you to have it like number one is very like important. And then two, of a family man. There's one thing you mentioned too. His eyes shined with love for his family, dinners, sports, vacations, play together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is something about the shiny eyes of, you can tell when someone loves being with their family, when someone is that idea of being a family man. It's part of my identity. Is like, I that was true about my dad, and I think those who know me best and that are surrounded, like, would say that's true about me, that I am a family man, and I treasure my family, and my eyes shine when I talk about them versus, grumble about what's going on at home. And yeah, I think it's a choice daily. It really is.
Yeah. One thing that comes to my mind, like growing up, I used to hate when my dad would take vacations, because he would take vacations from work to put us to work at home. Like we wouldn't go nowhere. So now what I do, I tell my like my saying is, when my kids are on vacation, I'm on vacation. So I schedule my work vacation when they're off. Let's say like spring break or the summer. Like I want to be intentional about spending time with them, and I'm actually gonna take a month off recording podcasts, because the way I do it is every 2 weeks. So I already got a couple recorded that are gonna cover me from June, like early June to early July. So I already told them I'm gonna take those 30 days, whatever you guys need me to do for you. I'm not gonna be, no recording, no editing, no none. I want to be there for you guys, because I love something that you mentioned. Like if this is taken away from you being a father, then it's taken away from the work that you set out to do, right? So
Right.
man, we got to be intentional about scheduling the text. I got my 18-year-old and 16-year-old. I got to teach how to drive. So during those 30 days, there's gonna be a lot of driving, and I just want to be intentional about pouring into them. So when I do jump back into this, they won't feel like, oh, dad's all about just doing the podcast or that ministry or this. So I think it's very important to be a family man, so integrity, telling the truth and following through on commitments always. That was number three.
Yeah, he modeled this, I mean, in many ways in the home front, but also like, there's a lot of stories of business relationships, homes he built, customers, clients that that was always a common thread back to us kids. We heard the stories about how he operated and led with integrity, and his word was his word. It was a handshake deal was plenty good with my dad. Like, he didn't need a big contract written up because he knew he was going to stand behind it. And yeah, that's a big deal to that I want to be true about me. So
Yeah.
really admired that.
Yes, same here. I believe like let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like, follow through. That's very big. This one I love. Dream chaser, seeing the future and believing in faith that he could move past obstacles to get there.
Yeah. So I think the dream chaser, visionary, I believe it's possible. I'm willing to put the hard work in to see it, even though I don't see it clearly yet. I believe that it's coming, that breakthrough or that next step. So yeah, he definitely led that way, and career wise was willing to take risks because he could envision a better future for our family, and there's ministry tied with that as far as the impact he had to other families and guests and the community that we moved to in northern Wisconsin. So he definitely chased his dreams.
Yeah, and that like transferred into you, right? Where you envision it, and now you're out there like doing the same. Like what
It really
started
is.
off with curiosity, was it?
Yeah, curiosity of like, I have been working actually on a 2030 vision. So 6 years of just trying to bring clarity to what do I hope and dream for? What am I praying for 6 years out? That's a lot of time. Like, so you don't see the progress, especially, parents, young parents, like dads, like we don't see the progress in this month, next month, this 6 months, sometimes even this whole year. We might not see the gains, the progress. It's not very quantifiable. And so I want to be a visionary that can kind of really grab a hold of a vision that's 6, 12 years out, ways out, and just keep after it in the small things, even though I don't see the results in the short term.
Got it. You know what? I want to be a man of my word. I told you 1 hour. I'm already at 108 over here. So I'm going to run through these, and maybe you could touch on one. So here, number 6 is excellence. Number 7 was love for others. Number 8, problem solver. 9, generationally generous. And 10, this is what I want to touch on.
Sure.
Surrounded by praying friends. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. Why is it important for us to be surrounded by praying friends?
Yeah, and this is a story I think I have shared before publicly, but with my dad in one of his, I think it was like 2 days before he passed away, we called on the phone, one of my dad's best friends, and he said, "Hey, can you guys just give me a moment?" And I could hear some sounds on his side of the telephone. He said, "I just wanted to get down on my knees and pray." So, my dad had, friends like that even though he's over a phone call, he like wanted to get down on his face and pray on his hands and knees, seeking God for my dad. And that marked me. It marked me for sure. And yeah, even seeing my dad's friends continue to care for my mom here 4 years later when she's, doesn't have a husband here. And so praying friends is a huge deal. And there's chapters that you pray often with the group, and then you move. Like our family, we moved into an RV, and then we moved again from the RV into Northeast Florida. Like, so developing and growing friends who pray. Often you have to be the friend who prays for them. Like, as you grow those friendships of men who are going to pray for you. So yeah, that is true about me. Like, I'm a man of prayer. I want to seek God on behalf of my friends, and I'm seeing that in my friends who are praying for me, and I get to celebrate with them. Then when prayers are answered, how cool is the celebration when they're a part of it versus you're on your own praying for yourself and praying for different things. So
yeah, man. So on that note, I'm praying. Any final words? Anything you want to share, maybe with our audience, so maybe something God's placed on your heart, and then if you could close us out in a prayer.
Yeah, wow. Like I started, I'm so grateful for Wrong to Strong, for you, Omar, and your vision for reaching with the power of testimony. Like, I've really been thinking a lot about peaks and valleys, that every story is full of these moments that you give thanks for the peaks. This is another quote that I can't attribute to the right person, but nothing grows at the peak. The mountain peaks are rocky and nothing grows there. Then there's a valley, And you know what happens in the valley is like the most beautiful places on earth are the valleys because of the flourishing growth, because it collects all the moisture, right? But valleys in our story, we don't like to talk about the goodness of God in the valleys, but just what you're doing of pulling out testimonies, sharing testimonies, and helping. Even you've mentioned a couple times the folks who you serve and are listening, the community you've built with Wrong to Strong, the choice to be resilient and to step in with your whole heart to the next season. If there was a valley, there's a peak coming, and your story needs to be shared. So the more we share, I've got a group of guys that we share 7-minute slices. It's not your full story. We set a timer. We say, hey, in 7 minutes, share about some peaks and valleys. Share what God has brought you through. Share what you're learning. Share about a time you stumbled and it hurt you, it hurt people. But guess what? You kept going. You have hope because we serve the God of all hope. So that's what I wanted to cheer on and to kind of put an exclamation point to is peaks and valleys. Our stories are full of them. They both can be like God is in both the high moments and the really sad, hard moments that are painful. But he is a God of turnaround. He's a God of testimony. He's powered by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Amen.
We will overcome. We'll overcome. So I have huge faith for you, for the men and women you serve, and I'd be glad to pray for you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Heavenly Father, thank you that you reveal yourself in the Bible as a loving Father, a present Father, a faithful Father. A God who actually runs to us. You're not a God who's a long ways off. You're a God who says, you're having a hard day. I'm gonna run to you and to be very near to you. So I pray that everyone listening would know, God, you are very near, and you specialize in turning stories around. So God, if anyone's listening right now and feels like it's a low point in their story, a direction they're headed is towards harm or towards hurt or towards giving up or towards hopelessness, I just pray that they would know right in this moment that you are the God of all hope and that you specialize in giving us strength, in bringing provision, in answering prayers, in restoring peace, and in saving. You are our Savior. So I just pray that you would reveal yourself as the Savior, as their Savior, and you would restore hope. And we're just so grateful for your love. So thank you for everyone who's listening, for them journeying with us through this story. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, brother, before we sign off, could you share the sites, maybe
Sure.
where people could find you,
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to. So dadawesome.org. Dadawesome.org is the website for all things Dad Awesome. You can click on the events and get right over to all the fathers for the fatherless stuff. So I won't share the separate website because you can find that through Dad Awesome. And then on Instagram, @Dad Awesome and @Fathers for the Fatherless, all spelled out. Those are the two main handles that share the impact of what we're doing. Those are the best two ways to kind of stay in the loop.
Amen, brother. I want to thank you for your time. I know we went to OT over here, so your check will be in the mail for the overtime. But thank you so much for being on here, man. It was a blessing to connect with you, and God willing, the people that are listening, definitely go out there, check out these stories, these testimonies. You will truly be blessed by that. So with that, we're gonna get ready to sign off. Matthew 4:16 reads, "The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. And upon those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned." Alongside my guest, Jeff Zaugg, I'm Omar Calvillo, and we are Wrong to Strong.